Okay, so we are going to continue, or not continue, but I'm gonna go ahead and do the recap. Let me turn up my volume here. The recap for the depression lecture that we did. And the reason I wanted to do this one first is because I posted a really good video that goes really well with it. It's by Nurse Mike. I put an announcement as well. It's under week 5 and it says Nurse Mike. It's about 17 minutes. As I mentioned in class, if you weren't there or if you didn't hear what when I said it, it coincides well with what I said, probably about 25 to 30% of it. The one thing he does say is about tapering off medications. Monica had asked in class, which was great, about that question. And he either doesn't say it right or got confused, but you can taper off one medication and go on to another. Just FYI, that was the one thing I noticed that was incorrect. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that that's not going to be on your NCLEX or anything I'm testing you on, but didn't want you to get confused if you heard that. And then I am going to add just a few little things in here. So this will probably be maybe like a 17-minute. I'm going to try to keep it short because you have Nurse Mike as well. So Nurse Mike is mainly talking about what we did in class when we did the depression video. And I'm also going to be doing a review of today's Quizlet. So already that has a question about how do we diagnose? We know we diagnose depression and other mental health illnesses, but with the DSM-5, we already know that. We know, just as a recap, that we have circumstantial versus chemical types of depression. Again, this isn't something I'm going to ask you about. It's just to make the picture, full, meaning circumstantial, had a really bad day, maybe got in a car accident and really loved your car, lost a loved one, whatever it may be. Everybody's different, right? And then chemical, which we know about because we talk about these chemicals. And the main antidepressants are the SSRIs, so selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the SNRIs, selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, tricyclics, MAOIs, and then something we talked about in class today, outliers. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. I also posted, so Nurse Mike talks, and I really do encourage, this isn't a Mission College statement, but I personally did use him when I was in school, and I found his videos to be very helpful for mnemonic devices. He's very energetic. He does talk very fast, so you may have to watch it more than once sometimes, depending on what you're getting from the video and how much information you need. But he talks about SSRIs, SNRIs, tricyclics, and MAOIs, which I think is great because I don't talk about tricyclics and I don't talk about MAOIs other than what I've said, which is they really don't mix with anything. Also, I posted a video and I made it part of a homework assignment. Nurse Mike, I didn't. This is just for you. And I really highly, highly recommend that you watch it. I think it really helps bring things together. But I did post a short video on MAOIs. And as far as, so what Nurse Mike does is he helps kind of be able to help you concentrate on what they're going to focus on for the NCLEX, which of course is where, we're headed. And I will definitely ask questions similar and maybe go over questions like that later on, who knows. But I really like how he does that. That's really good for you. And the tricyclics and the MAOIs, even though we don't really talk about them, and I don't plan on even right now, but the MAOIs is understanding that what you need to avoid and why we don't usually prescribe them. Because all the foods you have to avoid, everything like that. So that part is important. Tricyclics, I'm not going to ask you about in this class. MAOIs, I may ask you a question as far as a potential side effect and what could happen. And one of the most common things that can happen is a hypertensive crisis. And that If you haven't learned that yet, that's basically meaning your blood pressure is going to skyrocket. And that's if you're on this medication and you take or use or do something that can potentially cause that hypertensive crisis. Again, please watch his video. It's very, very helpful. So we're looking for nursing indications with that. We are familiar with SSRIs and SNRIs. For the SNRIs, we know that that interacts with serotonin and norepinephrine. We won't go too deep into that because we I think have that down, as well as the SSRI. And he talks about that in his video, as well as it's on the Quizlet from the review that we did today in class. And so what we'll do real quick, just as a reminder, for SNRIs, we're really lucky because we're really looking at 3. That's the only 3 I've ever seen. So Effexor, Cymbalta, and Proseq. Those are the 3 I want you to remember. Again, I'm not going to ask you to remember every medication. I did say this in class today. I do give a study guide, as you know, from the first quiz. It's not the exact stuff that's going to be on the test, but it helps kind of guide you. I will put what medications are important because I think that's important. We're not going to learn every single medication. So, but I do expect you to know Effexor, Cymbalta, Proseq. That will be on the study guide, as well as for SSRIs, which only have to do with serotonin. I expect you to know Prozac, Paxil, Lexapro, and Celexa. Okay. So serotonin and norepinephrine, we know what that is because we know that SNRIs have to do with serotonin and norepinephrine. Serotonin helps with well-being, norepinephrine helps with energy and motivation. And we know that SSRIs have to do with serotonin, which we just said serotonin has to do with feeling of well-being. Now, as far as how long they take to work, so Nurse Mike says about 2 to, I think he says 2 to 4 weeks. It's 2 to 4 weeks, 3 to 6 weeks. 6 weeks is like kind of that marker where you're really going to look at. If it's not really working by that time, I would continue it maybe a little bit more. But if it's not working by then, we may consider upping the dose, maybe changing it. So I usually stick around. So 2 to 4 weeks or 3 to 6 weeks. I would never ask you on a quiz or a test. I would never ask you and put both of those on there. I would either put 2 to 4 weeks or I would put 3 to 6 weeks. I'm not going to confuse you. Just as a side note, and a reminder that SI stands for suicidal ideation. If we know that a patient is having any thought of being suicidal or potentially wanting to harm themselves, what is the first thing that we're going to ask? This you definitely need to know this as a recap, and that is, do you have a plan? Very important for safety. Okay, now let's get to the last 3 things that we did not talk about, and these are the outliers. So the outliers, remember, we have our SSRIs, our SNRIs, our tricyclics, our MAOIs, and our outliers. We went over in great detail the SSRIs, SNRIs. Nurse Mike goes over the tricyclics, even though in my class you don't need to know the specifics. MAOIs, you do need to know the safety part of that. So that's why where he comes in, and pretty much what I said here on a few minutes ago. But you also need to be able to point out some of the foods. So like fermentation, and this will be on the study guide if and when it's on, it's not going to be on your midterm. I don't think I made that study guide yet, but we'll see. I think I made the study guide for quiz 2, but maybe not for the midterm. I do not believe so. So, but you will probably see that somewhere else, but it will be on the study guide. So you'll know that you need to be prepared. So let's do the outliers quickly, and then we'll be done with this video. So when I say outliers, it just means it really doesn't fit into any of the categories. One of them we talked about today was Wellbutrin. Wellbutrin is a medication that is considered an antidepressant. That's its classification. And it goes to norepinephrine only. So it's not an SNRI because it doesn't go to serotonin. It's not an SRI because that doesn't go to norepinephrine. So it's an outlier. It goes to norepinephrine only, which we know helps with motivation and energy. So Wellbutrin, the three things you need to know about that is that it goes to norepinephrine. I just call it an outlier. Miss B actually does as well. When she's doing her lecture, I heard her say outlier. So it's interesting, but that's not like exactly like probably what if you went to a pharmacist, they'd probably call it something else. But for this case, it just makes it easier, especially if you're doing it on a chart. So Wellbutrin, it's important to know that it is an antidepressant. It goes to the neurotransmitter norepinephrine, we know helps with energy and motivation. It is also used off-label for smoking, I have trouble saying it, cessation, which means to help you stop smoking. And then one other thing that is good with this medication is it doesn't usually have sexual side effects. So especially if a patient comes in and has had sexual side effects from certain medications, usually medications that, and that's why we're making the newer ones, and not we, but someone came up with the newer ones, because of course people don't want to take medications that have side effects, especially something important like, I mean, sex is an important thing in relationships. So Wellbutrin is one that is, if someone walks in and says, you know, I don't want to be on this medication for depression because I have trouble, you know, with my girlfriend, and that just makes me more depressed. So that could be a medication that we would try first. So that is another thing that's good about it. And just to throw it in there, it can also be prescribed for ADHD. So let's just add that in right now. I didn't say that in class today, but I'll say it now. So Wellbutrin, it's an outlier. It is considered an antidepressant. It goes to norepinephrine, which helps with energy and motivation. Off-label, it can be used for people to help stop smoking. It also does not have sexual side effects, and it can be used off-label for ADHD. So there you go. It's a pretty cool medication, right? The next one is called trazodone. So trazodone is a medication they used to use back in the day, is what I call it, because I don't really know when, but it was back in the day. And medication has a therapeutic range, so it must hit a certain point. So if I gave you 1 milligram of Advil, and normally people take about 400 milligrams, 800 milligrams, 1 milligram is going to do nothing, right? So you need to take enough in order to get a therapeutic effect. So trazodone, in order for it to work on serotonin and actually do something in the brain to help with depression, you must take 400 to 600 milligrams. Now, what was happening is patients were falling asleep and they would just sleep all day. It was causing such lethargy that you weren't depressed because all you were doing is sleeping. So then they thought, just like with most off-label, so we use it off-label, especially actually in the mental health community. And I'm very happy to see now more in the world of primary care, because it is not considered to be the potential to be habit forming, which is great. You know, so we can try this medication maybe before one that has the potential to be addictive, right? And in my experience, it has so many people, but I would say 92% of my patients tolerate it very well. It's cheap, insurance covers it. I'm fond of it. I'm a fan. So they notice, well, hey, if we give it at like 50 milligrams, and you don't have to remember this. It's just understanding why don't we use it for depression is because we would have to use it at such a high dose that patients they would be asleep. So that's what's important to remember. But I will give you kind of the average dose. So for sleep, usually they will start at around 50 to 100 milligrams. I would say the average dose is 150, like 1 to 150 for sleep. And in my experience, once it goes over like 250 is, I think, the highest I've ever seen it for sleep, then we do usually something else, a different medication. So again, we do not use trazodone anymore for depression because it causes such lethargy where people will unfortunately be sleeping, and we want them to have quality of life. And that in order, so it would be incorrect if a nurse told a patient, oh, great, you're on trazodone, which means I see here you're taking 100 milligrams at night. So it's going to help with your depression as well as your sleep. No, because you must take 400 to 600 milligrams in order for it to have anything to do with serotonin. So that would be an incorrect statement. The correct statement is it's helped for sleep. So trazodone is used off-label to help with sleep. And last but not least, we'll just quickly go over this one. It's not a real popular medication, not for any particular reason. I see it more with the elderly population, and this is probably why. And not saying that if you're taking them, that means you're elderly. I'm just letting you know why. So Remeron, which is Remeron, Remeron is an antidepressant, and it basically does a couple things as well. So it helps with depression. It helps with sleep. So you actually take it at night because it helps you to be sleepy. So whenever I get these patients, it's like where you can do multiple things with one medication. It makes me happy because, if we can do less is best, right? So it helps with depression if it works for you. It helps you sleep. And then it also helps with appetite. And that's what I mean by some elderly patients that have trouble gaining weight, or just patients that are really, really, really depressed and haven't been eating. Excuse me. This could be a really good medication for them. And it could always be switched to something else, but it can be really helpful to help with that appetite, especially if they've lost a lot of weight, and that can cause dizziness and all sorts of things. So again, Remeron. So the outliers are Wellbutrin, trazodone, and Remeron. Those are the three that I mean, there's more, but those are the three that are pretty common. And I think I said everything I need to say about that. Wellbutrin, trazodone, and Remeron all are not potentially habit forming. Just as a side note, no antidepressants, so no SSRIs, SNRIs, tricyclics, or MAOIs are considered to be habit forming, even though they say don't stop them abruptly because you'll go into withdrawal. It's not the same type of withdrawal such as methamphetamines, heroin, alcohol, things of that nature. So for this, I'm going to stop with this lecture. I will mention some more things from the Quizlet today. And then I'll do one on hallucinations, delusions, and illusions. I will probably do the hallucination one tonight, and then do the review for today and post that one tomorrow. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And it was nice seeing you all in class today. And I hope to, well, actually, we'll see some of you tomorrow. Thank you so much.